Hello and welcome to Sarvatra. As a part of my day job, that is what I do to put food on the table, I work in a global industry, in an international industry for a non-government organization. So I have a lot of dealings and interactions at local, regional, national, international levels with various government, non-government stakeholders, government organizations, part of international organizations like the United Nations, its organizations and agencies. And as a part of one of these interactions, it was a video conference last week. When you are at these international organizations, protocol is very important. In this interaction last week, the delegate from Cyprus took exception to a report that had been made in the name of the government of Cyprus, because this report came from, it was about a town in northern Cyprus, and the government was the Turkish Cypriot government that the Cypriot government doesn't recognize. This was about a town called Famagusta. Now, the moment I heard the name of this town, it took me down memory lane. Now, I have never been to Famagusta, although I have been to Cyprus. I've never been to Famagusta, I've never been to northern Cyprus. But this name was very familiar to me. And I, to be honest, found it hard to concentrate for the rest of that 1 hour long video conference. And all I could think of is when I could get some free time, and when I could record this video and speak of what I am speaking about today. Famagusta is a town which is now under the occupation of the Turkish Cypriot government, or North Cyprus. And Cyprus was invaded in 1974 in the month of July, 46 years ago. In fact, almost exactly those many years ago, because in August, around the time that India and Pakistan celebrate their Independence Day, between the 14th of August and 16th of August, Famagusta was invaded by the Turkish forces who occupied it. The town was predominantly Greek Cypriot, so the Greek inhabitants of the town, they left the town. They didn't take much with them, they just fled the town. And they were quite confident that they would come back when the dust settles, and that would be sooner than later. They were very confident that the international community would intervene and intervene in their favor. Unfortunately for them, it's been 46 years, and the town that they fled is as is. It was cordoned off by the Turks, and it is now effectively a ghost town. This is 1974. 3 years, or rather less than 3 years before this, in 1971, in December 1971, to be precise, on the 16th of December 1971, there were two armies face to face in the Battle of Basantar. The 17th Horse, or which is also called the Pune Horse, of the Indian Army was facing the 13th Lancers of the Pakistan Army. There were two squadrons that I'm going to talk of today, the Bravo Squadron and the Alpha Squadron. A tank squadron normally consists of 12 to 14 tanks, and each tank squadron has troops. The tank troops are made up of 2 to 3 tanks. In the case of the Indian tanks, these were Centurion tanks, British made, and these tanks had a crew of 4 people. You had the tank commander, you had the radio operator, you had the driver and the gunner. On the other side, you had the 50-ton Patton tanks. Bravo Squadron of the 17th Horse was having troubles. They called out for help, and Alpha Squadron, there was this young officer, Arun Khetarpal. Arun was a second lieutenant, very recently commissioned, less than 6 months before this. Usually what happens is that When you are commissioned, you have to complete your YO course or Young Officers course. It is like a probation of sorts where you start learning about your own arm. And in this case, Arun had not completed his YO course, but since the war clouds were looming, he insisted and he was pushing his CO to send him to the front to fight. This was declined. Then he undertook that he would do the course in a record time and finish it within a fraction of the time that it's usually given to officers to finish, and then he could deploy. This happened. He went to the Western Front, and here he was. So Arun Khetarpal was leading a troop of tanks, so 3 tanks that is, his and another 2. He went to help Bravo Squadron. He started taking down tanks after tanks, and his tank suffered a hit. He lost immediately his radio operator, Savar Nand Singh. Savar is the equivalent of private in the armored corps and the cavalry of the forces of the subcontinent. It simply translates to rider. So Savar Nand Singh died immediately as a result of this, and this hit took off the track of Arun's tank. So without the tracks, the tank is immobile. It cannot move. The bogie wheels can't get enough traction. So it was just stuck there. It was a sitting duck. His tank was on flames. He was told by his CO to abandon his tank, to which he said these words, which have gone down in history. He said, "No, sir, I am not abandoning my tank. My gun is still working and I will get these bastards." His troop and he ended up taking 10 tanks down. It was just him and another Pakistani tank. Let's fast forward to 2001. Retired Brigadier Arun Khetarpal of the Indian Army was born in Sargodha, now in Pakistan, in 1920. In his old age, he desired to visit his place of birth. Travel papers were prepared by his friends and they facilitated his visit to Pakistan. At Lahore airport, his unknown host received him and took him to his home in Lahore. The visit to Sargodha and the hospitality throughout the stay in Pakistan was, in the words of Brigadier Khetarpal, most memorable. The hospitality of his host himself, all members of his family and the servants touched him. However, there was something in the eyes of every member of the family of his newly found friend which Brigadier Khetarpal couldn't explain. At the end of the visit, on the night before he left Lahore for New Delhi, his host sat close to Brigadier Khetarpal and said, "Sir, there is something that I wanted to tell you for many years, but I did not know how to get through to you. Finally, fate has intervened and sent you to me as an honored guest. The last few days, we have become close to one another, and that has made my task even more difficult. It is regarding your son, who is, of course, a national hero in India. However, on that fateful day, your son and I were soldiers, unknown to one another, fighting for the respect and safety of our respective countries. I regret to tell you that your son died in my hands." Arun's courage was exemplary, and he moved his tank with fearless courage and daring, totally unconcerned about his safety. Tank casualties were very high till finally there were just 2 of us left facing one another. We both fired simultaneously. It was destined that I was to live and he was to die. The host was retired Brigadier Khwaja Muhammad Nasir. Arun was the son of Brigadier Khetarpal. A few days after his return from the sentimental journey, Brigadier Khetarpal received a few photos from Brigadier Nasir from the visit, and it had a note. The note said, "With warmest regards and utmost sincerity to Brigadier M.L. Khetarpal, father of Shaheed 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal, Paramveer Chakra, who stood like an insurmountable rock between the victory and failure of the counter-attack by the spearheads, that is the 13th Lancers, on 16th December 1971 in the Battle of Badapind, as we call it, and the Battle of Basantar, as 17th Horse remembers. Khwaja Muhammad Nasir, 13th Lancers, 2nd March 2001, Lahore, Pakistan." I also want to read out the citation of 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal. On 16 December 1971, the squadron commander of Bravo Squadron, the Pune Horse, asked for reinforcements as the Pakistani armour that was superior in strength counter-attacked at Jarpal in the Shakargarh sector. On hearing this transmission, 2nd Lieutenant Khetarpal, who was in Alpha Squadron, voluntarily moved along with his troop to assist the other squadron. En route, while crossing the Basantar River, 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal and his troops came under fire from enemy strongpoints and RCL gun nests that were still holding out. Time was at a premium, and as a critical situation was developing in the Bravo Squadron sector, 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal threw caution to the winds and started attacking the impending enemy strongpoints by literally charging them, overrunning the defense works with his tanks and capturing the enemy infantry and weapon crew at pistol points. In the course of one such daring attack, one tank commander of his troop was killed. 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal continued to attack relentlessly until all enemy opposition was overcome and he broke through towards the Bravo Squadron position. The Pakistanis fought very bravely and did not retreat even after the losses. Instead, they kept moving forward after their initial probing attack on his squadron. He was so carried away by the wild enthusiasm of battle and the impetus of his own headlong dash that he started firing at the tanks that came so close to him and even managed to shoot and destroy one. Soon thereafter, the enemy reformed with a squadron of armour for a second attack, and this time they selected the sector held by 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal and two other tanks as the point of their main effort. A fierce tank fight ensued. 10 own tanks and 3 enemy tanks were hit and destroyed, of which 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal personally destroyed 2. Just then, 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal was severely wounded. He was asked to abandon his tank, but he realized that the enemy, though badly decimated, was continuing to advance in his sector of responsibility, and if he abandoned his tank, the enemy would break through. He gallantly fought on and destroyed another enemy tank. At this stage, his tank received a second hit, which resulted in the death of this gallant officer. 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal was dead, but he had, by his intrepid valor, saved the day. The enemy was denied the breakthrough he was so desperately seeking. Not one enemy tank got through. 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal had shown the best qualities of leadership, tenacity of purpose, and the will to close in with the enemy. This was an act of courage and self-sacrifice far beyond the call of duty. So this is the citation for the Paramveer Chakra of Second Lieutenant Arun Khetarpal. Close to 3 years later, this town, Famagusta in North Cyprus, is overrun by the Turks. The Greek Cypriots left the town and Famagusta was effectively a ghost town that it still is. Arun Khetarpal's tank had the following crew members. I mentioned Savar Nan Singh, who was killed in action. He was killed the moment the tank took the first hit. Then there was Acting Lance Dafadar Nathu Singh, who was the gunner. Acting Lance Dafadar is the equivalent of Lance Naik in the other regiments and arms of the subcontinent's armies, which is like a Lance Corporal. And there was Savar Prayag Singh, who was the driver. Savar Prayag Singh and Acting Lance Dafadar Nathu Singh were captured. They were given medical treatment. I must also mention this. The Pakistani captors took care of them and returned them back to the Indian side, along with the remains of Arun Khetarpal and Nan Singh. Savar Prayag Singh went on to become a Risaldar, which is equivalent of a Subedar. It's like a warrant officer of sorts. It's a junior commissioned officer. In the Armored Corps, it's called Risaldar. The equivalent in the other regiments is Subedar. Acting Lance Dafadar Nathu Singh went on to become an honorary captain, and Nathu Singh and Prayag Singh survived the war. Here is a picture of all the tank crew. The Centurion tank that was commanded by Arun Khetarpal was called Famagusta. All the tanks in the 17th Horse were named after either the battle honors or the places that the regiment served in. In the 1940s, 17th Horse or the Pune Horse served in Famagusta. And so the tank got this name. Now I remember the name of this tank from the stories of Arun Khetarpal that I had heard of when I was growing up. So immediately when I heard this name again after many years, I just couldn't wait till I got down to record this video and present it to you. This is the name of an obscure ghost town in Cyprus that all Indians must know. The town in Cyprus is devoid of its original population. They've been driven out of there. The place is effectively dead. Well, the Indian army didn't do that with the Famagusta they had. They made sure that the tank is restored. They got the tank back from the Pakistanis, they restored it. And wherever the Pune Horse is deployed, 17 horses deployed, Famagusta goes along with the regiment. With that, I'll take your leave. If you like this video and more such content, please do like and share. It would be nice for every Indian to know the name of this Cypriot ghost town. Jai Hind.